Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Planning Advisory Committee for the Town of Quispamsis for Tuesday, September 14th. Item number 2, can I have approval of the agenda, please? Mark,
So move.
have a seconder in that? Brenda?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Doesn't pop up yet.
Plug this in for now, okay? Okay.
Motion carried on a vote of 5-0. Item 3, disclosures of interest. We have one for item 7B. That'd be Brenda. Thank you, Brenda.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I will excuse myself from 7B.
Okay, thank you. Item 4, approval of previous minutes. Can I have a motion to approve previous minutes, please? No, Darren?
So moved.
Brent?
Second.
All in favor? All done? Yeah. My motion of 5-0, motion carried. We'll move on to item 5, business arising from previous minutes. Can I have a motion to receive and file, please? Brenda?
So moved.
Can I have a seconder on that? Mark?
Second.
All in favor? By a vote of 5-0, motion carried. Before we get into the actual unfinished business and new business, just want to remind people online and in the audience that each agenda item will be introduced and the applicant will be asked to present, then answer questions from PAC members. Anyone wishing to speak to an application will be given an opportunity after the PAC members' question period. Each person will have their microphone unmuted, will be called to speak one at a time in alphabetical up here at the podium. Each person will be limited to speaking not more than 10 minutes. The numbers of speakers will be limited, stating that who will be talking about the same subject or comments, unless there's additional information expanding on the same subject for the same agenda. Additional comments must be of a different subject. Once every member, each members of the audience speaks, the applicant comes up and is allowed to speak at the final time. There's no more audience participation after that time. Once the applicant comes back up to the podium to speak again, then we decide on whether to make a motion for or against at that time. So, thank you. We'll move on to item 6, unfinished business, 15 Pettingill Road. Could the applicant for sign variance please come up to the podium on that one, or are they online? Okay, and Jennifer, can you introduce the topic?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, on August the 10th, Planning Advisory Committee did hear a application from the applicants, the most of which Planning Committee agreed with. However, they did ask for a height variance, and that was refused by the Planning Advisory Committee, and they were asked to revisit and resubmit plans, of which they did, and they've brought it more into line with what Planning Committee had spoke about. It has now, the request now, the variance is equal to 20%, a 20% increase, whereas the original request was 47% increase. It's reduced from a 2.8 meter height variance to a 1.2 meter height variance. Staff have no additional concerns with this, and I will leave it up to the PAC now.
Thank you. For the applicant, you would have received the same package we did in the mail. Is there anything you'd like to add or discuss prior to members of PAC asking you some questions, or the audience?
No, nothing further. This was submitted by Hanson Signs, our sign company, and they couldn't attend the meeting, but that's fine. As far as I know, everything should be good. So,
All right, thank you. Any members of PAC have any questions for the applicant? Is there anyone in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions? Mark?
Mr. Chairman, I'll put a motion forward to grant a variance of 15 Pittingill Road, PID number 302-56226 to section 13A3E of sign bylaw number 036 to permit a sign height of 7.2 meters, subject to the following condition. A sign permit is issued prior to the sign being erected. And number 2, the approval is for the supply, drawing, and specification only, and any variation shall require further PAC approval.
Thank you, Mark. Can I have a seconder on that? Brent? Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yep, okay. On the question, please vote. Motion carried by a vote of 4-1. With that, for the applicant, in 5 to 7 business days, you'll have your letter in the mail. Please work with the town to get all necessary documentation in places and letter signed. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Now we'll move on to item 7, new business. Uh, 251 Hampton Road, PID 00252098. Could the applicant please come up to the podium or for that application, please? In the meantime, Jennifer, can you introduce the item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant is requesting a variance to the gross floor area of a detached garage, whereas the bylaw allows a detached garage with a gross floor area of 63 square meters. A variance of 25.4 square meters is required. It's an R1 lot. The size of that lot is 2,389 square meters. And we did receive one letter of concern from a property at Lake Road. They said that they had been seeing drainage issues in their yard since the applicants had introduced drainage tile and fill into the yard. So staff is requesting or suggesting that PAC request a site drainage plan to address that. But no other concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, applicant, could you please state your name for the record, please?
Carly McClellan.
Carly, you would have received the same package we did in the mail. Is there anything you'd like to add or discuss prior to questions?
I just wanted to say that we haven't made any changes to our weeping tile or where our drainage goes. Cole's grandfather lived there before us from 1964 onward, and it's always been in the same spot. We had to make some upkeep to a pipe underneath the driveway because it broke, but it's always gone to the same spot. And as far as bringing in fill, we haven't brought any to change our driveway or to heighten our property. We dug out 20 loads of fill to dig down for like the pad for the garage, and then brought back in 20 to compact it. So the height and the grade, and nothing has changed about our yard. And I did have our contractor do up a site drainage plan for the gutters from the back of the garage to go to the back of our property to a dry well.
Has that been submitted to the town yet or not yet? Or?
No, I just told Violet when I
Okay.
got here. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Are you open to questions from any PAC members? Have any questions for the applicant? None being, is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Could you please come up and state your name, please, for the record?
Hi, my name's Lori Zacharuk. My mother owns the property that is behind where the garage is going.
Yes.
My mother's lived there for 35 years. I watched less than 10 years ago the Browns add fill, bulldoze old sheds into that yard and brought the fill in. I've watched them bring in equipment and more fill and rearrange it. But when my mother's hedge now has land this high above it in the back, this property has never looked like that before. So it was not grandfathered in. And the drainage that she's spoken about that has been replaced because it was broken, that's all new fill, and the ground was raised up by at least 4 feet. And we're getting all of that water drainage, all of it. That my mother's property is a swamp.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time. Is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Could the applicant please come back up to the podium, please? Anything you'd like to add prior to PAC taking voting on this, or?
I mean, there's nothing really else I can say other than the driveway's always had that grade. It may look different because we dug a hole and then put dirt back where the hole was, and we did put rock on the side of the driveway just for aesthetic purposes, but it's always been raised like that. And unfortunately, like, we live on a hill and her mother's property is much farther down the hill, so any water that comes off the hill in general just keeps going down. And the backyard of her house is really low. And we have no intentions of directing any water that way purposely whatsoever. Like I said, we haven't changed where the water goes. It's always been that way. And she mentioned that to Lake Road, her neighbors also purposely, I guess, directed their water towards her mom's yard in her letter, so.
Okay, thank you. Does a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions? Brenda?
I just have one question, maybe Dwight can answer it. Have the staff looked at that drainage of that site to see what is happening to the Lake Road dwelling? If this becoming a swamp, something has happened there. I just was wondering if we know what's going on.
Dwight?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I haven't personally visited the site. I'm not sure if Mrs. Jarvis has. Again, but that's something that PAC can put forward before building permits or anything are issued, if additional information is required to address and look at the drainage concerns.
Thank you, Dwight. PAC, any members of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Anyone from PAC want to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions? Folks, we got an application up here in front of us. We have to decide on what we're gonna do with it. Brent or Kendall?
I'll put a motion forward. I recommend the Planning Advisory Committee approve a 25.4 square meter variance to section 8G1C for a detached garage with a total gross floor area of 88.4 square meters and a 17.3 square meter variance to section 8G3 permitting accessory buildings and structures found at 251 Hampton Road to occupy 103.3 square meters of the total lot area, subject to the following terms and conditions. Number one, the property owners are required to submit a site drainage plan to the municipal officer or their delegate for approval. The plan shall ensure surface drainage is controlled on the lot, directing surface water towards existing drainage channels and having no impacts to adjacent properties. My one question in regards to that is, can we take that a little further, ensure that no water is directed towards that property? I guess in my opinion, it should be the approval of the town engineer that the surface water is controlled off that lot. Number two, the westernmost property line between 251 Hampton Road and the abutting lots along Lake Road must be clearly delineated prior to construction. Number three, the detached garage is not to be used for business purposes as a self-storage rental for the keeping of livestock or as a dwelling. And number four, a building permit is to be issued prior to construction.
Can I have a seconder on that? Brent,
I'll second that.
on the question? Oh, Dwight?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, so with respect to the site drainage plan, drainage plan, obviously, if we're just receiving it now, hasn't been submitted, so part of the process prior to issuing a permit is the planning department reviews the site plans for setbacks as well as drainage concerns. So we'll review the site plan, and it'll have to demonstrate how water will be handled and conveyed on the lot to an appropriate receiving channel or a dry well or somewhere on the lot. If that is not demonstrated through the site plan, then obviously the site plan would have to be adjusted, so there may have to be adjustments to the actual location of the building or the size of the building in order to accommodate it. So that's something that's part of the process through planning before a building permit is issued.
Okay. Thank you, Dwight. Yeah,
Sure.
go ahead, Kendall.
Mr. Chairman, to staff, can we ensure that a member of staff does a site visit to ensure the site drainage is proper? You might have already said that. I just missed it. I apologize.
Okay to add that, Brent?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
in Kendall's motion, you're talking planning, Kendall's motion, he was talking engineering. So it's two different departments.
They're both noted. The first condition noted the municipal officer, which is the planning department.
Right,
And then he added the engineering department.
right, but when Dwight spoke, he just made reference to the planning department.
Yeah.
So I just wanna make sure both departments are involved, correct, Dwight? Based on the motion?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, if that is the motion of PAC, then that would be duly noted in the notice of decision.
Okay. Thank you. On the question, can we vote, please? Motion's been carried by a vote of 5-0. So in 5 to 7 business days, you have a letter in the mail. Please, you got your site plan submitted, and the town will work with yourselves to ensure the proper drainage and the lot next to you is looked after. So, thank you. Item 7B. An application to increase the number of staff permitted to engage in a home business, that of a salon, 12 Ruth Avenue, PID 30007124. Jennifer, can the applicant please come up to the podium or be released online? And Jennifer will introduce the item first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the applicants are seeking to increase their number of staff permitted at the home-based business that PAC approved last June. It is at 12 Ruth Avenue. The lot is 2,052 square meters. A home occupation shall be secondary to the main residential use of a building. Zoning bylaw 38 restricts the number of employees to be engaged in a home-based business to 1. And one thing that I did note was when PAC approved the business last year, there were no set hours of operations that were established. I think it would be prudent to establish some sort of guideline, at least, that they can operate between these hours. I think it would be prudent for staff to do that. The building is currently under construction. The applicants are building an attached garage and sunroom onto the building. 2 letters of concern have been received from neighboring properties, and both have referenced on-street parking as the main concern. Staff recommend that PAC members request a parking plan submitted to and approved by the municipal officer or delegate if they so choose to approve this application. And that is all I have for you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Could the applicant please state their name and
Vicki Mountain.
Vicky? Yes. Yeah, Vicky, you guys would have received, Dwight, you wanna say something, Dwight?
Sorry, just through you, Mr. Chairman, to PAC, just a clarification on the introduction. So the zoning bylaw permits the property owner to operate the business, as well as 1 additional employee. So it's 2, just a way of clarification.
Yeah, thank you. Oops. Okay, Vicky, you guys would have received the same package we did in the mail. Is there anything you'd like to add or discuss prior to members of the PAC or members of the public asking you some questions?
Yeah, definitely. I respect and appreciate my neighbor's concerns, but
Could you
right
come up to
now-
the podium, speak? Yeah.
So right now, we're under major construction, as Jennifer had mentioned. So the on-street parking, like tonight, I'm not in the salon, there's nobody in the salon at all, and there's at least 3 to 4 vehicles parked on the street because of our employees working there. Construction.
Not to do with the salon.
Yeah.
And once the construction is done, which we're hoping will be done around the end of October, that's going to free up our driveway plus the garage is a 2-car garage. So it's gonna have like 2 cars in the garage and definitely free up a lot of the ongoing traffic at the moment. So I know that that's become a concern with the on-street parking, but it wasn't a concern before. It's only been since we started building the garage, because there's literally no other place to put these vehicles when the men come to work on, they'll give a plumber, an electrician, so basically, I know that's been a major concern.
I'd just like to add to that.
State your name, please.
Sorry, I'm Vicky's husband, Kevin
Okay.
Como. And just to add, with parking on the street, keeping in mind it's a lot of construction. At one point, I had 5 people there to help me. It was there were 2 trailers in the driveway, trucks, vehicles. They had to park on the street. Once the construction is complete, again, we're going to have 2 of our cars that are going to be in the garage, freeing up more room in the driveway. The driveway will actually hold up to 8 vehicles, as long as we're not having all the construction whatnot going on. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, thank you. Any members of PAC have any questions for the applicant? Brent?
Yes, my question is JOD Aesthetics. Are they an employee of yours or are they a separate company?
So right now, no, they're not. Until
now- So right now, they're a separate entity?
It's been put on hold.
it's been put on hold, basically, until I know that things have been, if it's been passed, so.
But she's renting.
Okay,
Is
so,
that-
so if this passes, the esthetician is coming to your business? Or you're telling-
No, I wanted to hire somebody on and actually uploaded it online, so that's what you're seeing, but she's not been there at all, so.
So if she does come on, if you do end up the esthetician, though, is she coming on as an employee or is she gonna be an independent? Is she gonna be independent or is she gonna be an employee if you do bring her on?
She would be renting space from me.
Okay,
It would be like a room that she would be renting.
okay,
Is that what you're?
yeah, that's what I'm
Okay.
asking. Thank you.
Oh, any other questions for the applicant? Mark?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, through you here, do you have any, opening hours scheduled today, or there's no schedule? People can walk in anytime, or it's just by appointment only?
Only by appointment only, and that's what I did want to stress as well. So I'm a full-time employee at Kingsway Care Center, so I'm not in my salon at all times. I did this at our wedding too. And the other girl, which I know I was allowed to hire another employee on last year, she's a full-time school teacher, so she's only there 1, maybe 2 nights a week. So right now, between the two of us, it doesn't even equal up to a full-time employee. So if the esthetician comes on, she's only been hired, if she does come on, it would be part-time hours. So yes, it would be just, it's not drop-in, it's by scheduled appointments only. I would do it, we would definitely coordinate if, right now, because of the ongoing traffic that's happening in our spot, we would definitely, and I have been trying our best moving forward to have it that it's just me in the salon or just Megan in the salon or whatever. So, and a lot of times that has been happening, so.
So if I'm correct, if I understand correctly, the most customers you're gonna have at any given time is 2.
The-
One for the hairdresser and one for the manicure.
Potentially.
Potentially, yes.
That's the maximum number of customer you would have at any given time.
Absolutely.
So 2 cars in the driveway, basically
Absolutely.
maximum.
Yep.
Beside your own.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Having said that, are you planning to work on Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night? Because you're already working during the day, so I'm assuming it's gonna be mostly evening hours.
So right now, my schedule would be, typically I would work a Tuesday in my salon, a Wednesday or a Thursday night, or the odd Saturday morning.
Okay, none on the Saturday night and none on the Sunday
No.
night?
Oh, goodness, no, absolutely
Okay.
not. No.
Okay, thank you.
No.
If I can elaborate, I believe not on a Sunday at all, and it's
Yeah.
normally,
Not Sunday at all.
normally.
It's an in-house business and I don't want that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from PAC to the applicant? None being, is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Kendall?
I recommend the Planning Advisory Committee proceed with approving the increasing of staff for the home business, that of a salon at 12 Ruth Avenue, PID 3000712, subject to the following terms and conditions. Number 1, it shall be secondary to the main residential use of the dwelling. Number two, not more than 2 persons be engaged in a home-based business in addition to any permanent resident of the dwelling unit in which it's located. Number 3, a parking plan must be submitted to and approved by the municipal planning officer or the delegate. The parking plan will identify how all appointments, employees, and residents will utilize the off-street parking provided at 12 Ruth Avenue to meet the demands of the resident and the business in terms of parking. Number 4, there is to be no parking on the street or within town property. Number 5, hours of operation will fall within the following time frames. I'm assuming these are okay to the applicant. Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Saturday and Sunday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Number 6, all other terms and conditions that established in the notice of decision provided by Planning Advisory Committee dated June 16th, 2020 in relation to the operation of hair salon at 12 Ruth Avenue will remain in effect.
I have a seconder on that. We have a seconder on that? None being, would someone like to change the motion or? Mr. Bishop?
I'll second that.
Thank you. On a question, please vote. Oh, Mark?
Question.
Mark?
On recommendation number 5, I would remove Sunday 8 to 6.
Yeah.
The applicant said they would not be open on Sunday.
Is that okay with the? Yes, it is. Sharon? Perfect, okay. Can we please vote, please? Thank you. Oh, we got a seconder, yeah, the seconder said it, Darren. Huh? Okay. Let's remove that Sunday, yeah. Okay, Brent?
It's a question to wait. With regards to home-based businesses, so this is a hair salon that the application is based on. If the esthetician comes in, does that change the home-based business? So basically, you got 2 different types of businesses operating within the salon.
I think it's still a salon, but we'll let Dwight clear that up. Hang on, Dwight, trying to get you on there. Okay.
So it's not so much whether they're 2 separate businesses, it's the request that's been put before PAC. So if PAC feels that they are complementary to each other, which normally under this type of business you would find them, so any actual full commercial salon, you'd probably find these 2 types of services provided. So it's the request that's put before PAC that would make that decision.
That clarify it, Brent? Okay. Can we please vote? Thank you. Oh, it should be 3-1?
Wouldn't let me close without doing something for Brenda.
Okay, sorry, yeah. By a motion carried by a vote of 3-1. There's an error up there, so it's 3-1. Motion's carried. In 5 to 7 business days, you have a letter in the mail. Please work with the town and your neighbors to have all necessary documentation, your parking plan, and everything in place, and best of luck. You're welcome. You caught up, good. Yeah. Item 7C, an application requesting approval to develop 3 lots abutting a water course. Could the applicant please be released? And Jennifer will introduce the topic, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the applicant is wanting to develop 3 lots on Bridgeford Drive, and these lots are abutting a water course, and therefore they do require the approval of PAC through Section 6F of the zoning bylaw and Section 25F3. Also, we will require approval for a 9-meter side yard setback variance for lot 35 Bridgeford, which is PID 302611838. Whereas the foundation elevation variances for that lot, as well as PID 302611853 and 302611846, which is 23, 29, and 35 Bridgeford Drive, respectively. Staff just want PAC to be aware that a foundation elevation, the property owner should be aware of the risks of stormwater runoff as part of this, and notice was sent to property owners within 100 meters and no concerns were received. Thank you.
You're welcome. Could the applicant please state their name for the record? Can the applicant please state their name for the record? Are they online, Chrissy?
You see his name there,
Yeah.
and the real estate agent with him.
Are they muted? Want me to move it to the end? We'll take that item 7C and we'll move that to the end of the section 7 for new business, and hopefully we'll be able to get communication back in with them. With that being, we'll move on to item 7D. MPSF Developments, Inc. subdivision tentative plan. Could the applicant please come up to the podium, state their name for the record, please? And Dwight, do you want to introduce the topic, please? Thank you. Oh, we'll let Dwight go ahead there first, Rick. He's probably got to bring it up now that we jumped ahead. So.
Yeah, just want to make sure I'm talking with the right one.
Yeah. 7D MPSF Developments.
Yep. So the application, I've received an application or a subdivision plan to add 2 additional lots to a previously approved plan. In July, I believe, of this year, MPSF had submitted a subdivision plan to create a single lot not fronting a municipal street. So the request was to create a private street at that time. What was taken in consideration was that behind this plan there was going to be, and there's still in the works of this becoming a public street and further development. As noted in my staff report, if PAC would recall, one of the items that was brought forward at that time was there was a misalignment between the overall conceptual plan for the adjacent property and this particular property. There was a laneway that was proposing to connect 2 public streets, and there was a misalignment, as well as there was some sort of concerns with stormwater management for the area. So it was anticipated and kind of hoped that by this time that those items would have been addressed and this particular development would have been moving on to the next phase. Unfortunately, those items are still being looked at through the process. So the applicant has come back and said, would it be reasonable for my development be able to add 2 additional lots to the private street as we work through this process? Again, recognizing that, you know, phase two would be a public street and there's additional lots that would be coming behind this. So the applicant has engaged an engineering consultant who's looking at the overall development for this particular lot. So in terms of the street and in terms of servicing, it would be at this stage even developed to that particular level of engineering. And so the request that's become before PAC is looking to add these 2 additional lots. So as PAC would be aware, the subdivision plan requires that any lots that are created that don't front a municipal street, the actual access to the lots must be approved by the Planning Advisory Committee before the development officer can approve the plan. So the applicant and the subdivision plan is before PAC tonight for review and for consideration, and then any recommendations being provided to the development officer prior to approval of the plan or rejection of the plan, depending on the recommendations of the PAC. PAC, recall, this isn't a precedent-setting item in terms of development within the town. There have been other developments that have sort of taken the same approach of developing a private street with in due time becoming a public street, and just given sort of what the overall plan is for the area and the designs that are in the works. Planning doesn't have concern at this point of adding these 2 additional lots. Again, we always look at the number of lots that's being added and what it would be reasonable. Sort of what we look at in the past, any developments that have used a private street as access, 3 has sort of been that magic number of where we start to say, okay, like once we go beyond that, then we start looking and asking for consideration of a public street. So at this time, I'm just looking for recommendations and review of the Planning Advisory Committee in consideration of approving the plan.
Thank you, Dwight. Please state your name for the record.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, committee members, Rick Turner with U Surveys Consultants, here on behalf of the developer. I've reviewed the staff report, and so has the owner, and we have no problem with the report. In regard to, there was one letter received, which was, I guess it wasn't a letter of objection. He starts off with, I am in support of the project. However, I would like to understand the stormwater management plan better. Our stormwater management plan is prepared and submitted to the town office. I believe Mr. Colburn can confirm that that's come in. We certainly have no problem with sharing that information with the concerned citizen at 325 Model Farm Road as soon as staff have reviewed it and we're in agreement. I must say, in regard to the stormwater studies, there's a lot of material analyzed in those, and if anything, the runoff calculations are very conservative. So I think the runoff, we have to basically match the pre and post development. And I spoke with the engineer this afternoon, and he said, yeah, no, there's some buffer in there that probably there will be a little less drainage to the culverts the gentleman's referring to.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Any questions from PAC members to Mr. Turner? None being, is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Oh, come on up, Jerry. State your name for the record.
Jerry Roberts, land surveyor, Kirsta Quigley and Roberts. Just more of a question to PEC than not an objection. But is this tentative plan here overriding the previous tentative plan that was approved? I guess my only concern is with I represent the developer to the south in the adjacent subdivision. We've done, you know, a lot of design. We haven't submitted a formal tentative plan, but both, you know, the town and and the applicant received a preliminary design of that plan back in, you know, in January or February of this year. You know, and so when the results of the road that didn't match ours came in, it was about, you know, a week or two before. I don't even know it was 2 weeks, but it was at least a week before the last PAC meeting, and the streets were offset by about 50 feet. And it was a concern to the planning officer on it, and we've just haven't. We're trying to get to it now, but the you know, we're having you know, the engineering company that's doing the water stormwater management plan for it is in the process of it, but obviously it hasn't happened yet. And I just didn't know. I see that there's nothing on that side of the road, so is that giving us the opportunity to sort it out between ourselves in a meeting? I guess that's what I'd like to see done from a planning standpoint. But I just didn't know if this plan overrides the other one, because the other one was approved at the PAC meeting in July, I guess.
Dwight, do you?
So this plan would be sort of an amendment, if you will, to the previous tentative plan for phase one in terms of a single lot fronting municipal street, or lot not fronting municipal street through a private access. So this plan obviously sees that the remainder is a remnant. Phase two was reviewed and approved. However, again, at this stage, there's been no formal approval of phase two. So this particular plan itself would not have specific impact on phase two because these lots are on the upper side. So when you look at the lower portion abutting the subject property that you had referred to, obviously we're sort of still waiting to see feedback, as you've referred, in terms of what's coming in from the engineering consulting firm for the adjacent property. So this plan is specific to that first plan, phase one, requesting a lot on a private street.
Thank you, Dwight. No, you had another question in the back. Jerry, I can't bring you back up.
Okay, I just don't know if my question was answered.
We'll get your question. We'll get Rick back up after. Please state your name for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Steve Driscoll. I am the author of the letter, and I live at 325 Model Farm Road. I have a feedback item for you about the project and then a question about the project. So on the feedback item, I've been watching the development over the last few weeks. Very interesting. There's a lot going on there. I must say I'm excited about the potential for public use of a trail that appears to be drawn in there. I've heard rumors of that. I don't know how that'll go, but what the details are, but that's pretty exciting. And I'm also in support of the project that was intentionally put in the first paragraph of my letter. So I just want to start off with that. Another item that I'll share with you is over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of heavy equipment there, dump trucks coming and going, and there was apparently a need to transport some of the material out of the work site along Model Farm Road heading east. This is, I guess, last week sometime, and I arrived home and there was some debris on Model Farm Road. As you would expect, if you're having trucks drive on a dirt road onto a paved road, some of the pebbles and dirt and so on will stick in the treads of the tires, and it didn't really, I noted it, but it didn't disturb me at all. But what I found interesting was very shortly after I noticed that, I also noticed the developer, Mr. Forgeron, with a push broom manually sweeping the Model Farm Road from the site of the development, several properties past mine and all the way up the road. On both sides of the road, it was a significant effort. And I just think that speaks to the determination of Mr. Forgeron to be a good developer and a responsible, respectful developer for the citizens and for the town. So that's off to a good start. I'll get into my question now, and this is about the surface water runoff from the Alpenglow development down across the road. So I live across the road on the water side of Model Farm Road. there is a significant amount of water that comes off of the mountain, I'll call it, on the upper side of Model Farm Road during any storm. And the water that passes through the culvert underneath Model Farm Road at one of my property lines, it's a significant amount of water. Now, that culvert was upgraded, I think, perhaps 2 years ago or sometime around there, with a larger concrete culvert, and it has a volume, a capacity that it can carry a lot of water. So my concern isn't so much with the capacity of the culvert, but it does have the capacity to take a lot of water. That water proceeds down my property line and has carved a significant gully and all the way down to the Kennebecasis River. Now, that's not new. That's been there probably maybe before I was born, I don't know. But I do want to point out there's potential there for excessive water to move the land and carve that gully out further. Now, prior to any development, the water flowed down the mountain or down the hill on the upper side in an even distribution. It collected along the Model Farm Road, the upper side ditch, in an even distribution, and the culvert beside my property collected and transported its fair share of water. And then there were 2 other culverts on either side of mine that did the same. They transferred their fair share of water. But recently, and I know the project is in flux, so this is not so much of an immediate concern, but recently the storm we had, a much higher portion of the water from the upper side of Model Farm Road was passing through the culvert that is by my property line, and very little on the 2 culverts on either side. Again, if it's a transitionary phase, that's acceptable. But I would like to find or have some assurances from the town that when the project is complete, the amount of water that comes through the culvert by my property is the same as it was before. I've gone to significant effort and expense over this past summer to re-landscape and drain and pipe in my backyard to make it usable, because it was very wet. And so I'm curious about how this project may impact that. Now, I submitted my concern to the town approximately 2 weeks ago. I've made 3 or 4 phone calls to the town to try to find the answers, and I was told that I had to come to this meeting to find the answers. I would have preferred to hear from the town prior to this meeting, so I didn't have to come with a question. I could just stand in support of the project, but it is what it is. Mr. Forgeron has been very transparent in offering to show me his plan for the development, but my concerns are not so much about what is happening up there. It's the town's responsibility to manage the culverts under the road, as I understand it. So that's why I'm asking the town for their assurances that that water will be managed properly.
Thanks. Dwight?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Driscoll. So part of the process in terms of subdivision development is one of the elements that get looked at is stormwater management. The policy of the town in terms of stormwater management is what we call a pre and post analysis. So what happens is you have to look at what are all the flows that are coming in that particular property. You have to look at it prior to development state. Then you have to run an analysis to say that once we start adding in roadways, channels, hard surfaces, what happens to that flow? Obviously, once you put asphalt and you start putting hard surfaces in a vegetated area, the runoff in terms of flows and speeds and all that increases. So what has to happen is the analysis has to be run, and part of the stormwater management plan has to demonstrate that the water is controlled in such a manner that once it flows off of the subject property, starts entering existing infrastructure, it doesn't overwhelm the infrastructure or all of a sudden start causing damages either downstream, or if it backs up upstream. This stormwater management plan would look at what best practices are being used to demonstrate that the flows prior to development are either equal to or better coming off post-development. So what usually happens in a lot of these cases, if the process is to look at the actual land area, what are all the sort of sub-catchment areas, that all gets put in through a model, and then it looks at what are the receiving infrastructure down inside. So it looks at the size of the culvert, it looks at what happens when various rain events happen. So it's just not a 1 in 2-year, 1 in 5 year. It runs up to 1 in 100-year storm. The next level we look at, and we have been looking at, is 1 in 100 years plus 20%. So that 20% is looking at effects of climate change and just some changes in our weather, because what's happening in some cases in the winter, we get these freeze thaws, so it's a sheet of ice which actually reflects a hard surface. So in this particular case, what would have to happen is they would have to say, okay, we look at pre-development, post-development, what's happening to the flows. If they need to hold back the water, so it's a controlled release, so you don't get all of a sudden this fast release of water, which is gonna overwhelm the infrastructure, there's mechanisms of creating what we call retention ponds. So that retention pond will hold water for a period of time. There's a device that would, whether that's a smaller pipe or some device on a pipe that sort of releases an acceptable level of water over time. So rather than all the water passing in a matter of a couple of hours, it might take 10 to 12 hours for that, all the water that's held back to gradually make its way to the river. So that's something that we have to look at as part of this approval process. If the land area does not have the capacity to have retention ponds or other best practices to hold the water back, and the only way to solve it is to actually start upgrading infrastructure downstream, then obviously that's a cost that has to be borne to the developer, and then we have to look at what is that upgrade. And it's just not an upgrade to a pipe under Mallow Farm Road. It would be, in this case, looking at what are the receiving channels downstream, what properties do they cross, what are all those impacts all the way down to the actual point of discharge. So it is looked at very carefully. It's something that's analyzed. There's a lot of in terms of best practices, looking at what is acceptable, what are the impacts. So in this particular case, the information that we received so far has demonstrated that those are some of the practices that are being looked at in terms of retention pond, holding back water, and then a gradual release. So
In the distribution among the culverts that does pass underneath the Model Farm Road?
that's what is your sort of first initial receiving infrastructure.
Okay.
So if all of a sudden you were to release all of that, say a rain event in a 1 in 100 year storm, and it passes by in a matter of an hour, like what's going to happen? Like that pipe may not be able to handle it, then it's on the Model Farm Road. Where does it go from there? So all of that stuff has to be addressed as part of this process.
Great.
So there's various ways of doing it. Long-winded can be retention ponds. You try to eliminate the amount of hard surfaces. You try to keep as many trees and as much vegetation as possible to help absorb the water. So there's various mechanisms that can be used. All of that stuff gets put into a model that looks at that.
Great. Well, thank you. That's helped me have a better understanding of the town's position of it, and I appreciate the clarification.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Mr. Turner, can you come back up for the, oops.
To be clear, it's not a concern. I had a question. It's now been answered, so I'm very satisfied.
Thank you. Do you want to address any of those two questions, especially one from Mr. Jerry Roberts and for the road and the collaboration between the two lot developers?
Yeah, it goes back a considerable time when Mr. Forshrun, who certainly is a responsible developer, very responsible, he started some dialogue about a year ago, I guess, and things didn't seem to be moving along on the other side, if I could put it that way. It was sort of a tentative sketch on the adjoining property that we got absolutely no feedback with respect to the stormwater. It got to the point of what engineers are doing that for the adjoining property owner. I finally found that out, contacted them, and that's been a considerable amount of time too. And finally, within the last day, they called just to ask, well, what are your plans? What have you got completed on this? So we're going to share that information with them. We'll see where it goes. Anyway, there's been tremendous effort to try to get some cooperation on the other side, and it's not Mr. Roberts. It's been a bottleneck with the owner of the property.
Okay.
With regard to Mr. Driscoll, I'm glad Dwight gave that explanation because he did way better than I could. And I'll pass on Mr. Driscoll's comments to the engineer that's working on that. And he's been out there, he's seen the culverts, we've done surveying. His report now is filed with the town under review, and when that's finished, I'm sure there's no problem sharing that further information with Mr. Driscoll.
Okay, thank you. That being said, I think this is the third and final time. Is there anyone else online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Oh, Dwight, you wanted to go first, Dwight? Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just through you to PAC, just when I introduced the report, one item that is in my staff report that's going to be under consideration is the developer has requested at this time, as part of their planning for phase 2, they've submitted an engineering plan that shows the street grade is going to be like 9.8% or somewhere in that range. So rather than coming back to PAC at a later date, they're requesting that PAC would consider granting a variance for the future public street and its design at this particular time. At this stage, planning doesn't have a concern and engineering does not have a concern in terms of the street grade, as long as the stormwater management demonstrates how the water and the road stability would be handled through that small section where the grade's going to be in excess of 8%. So that's in your review as well.
Okay, thank you. Brent, you wanna?
Yeah, I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman. Make the motion that PAC approve the MPSF Incorporated Subdivision Phase 1, Alpine Glow Drive, revised tentative plan and conditions of approval that include 1, approval of the private street for access to lots 21-01, 21-02, and 21-07.
Brent, can you move the mic a little closer, please? Thanks.
Engineer design for the private street to ensure reasonable level of maintenance and uninterrupted access to lots by emergency service can be upheld. 3, an engineered stormwater management plan that demonstrates pre-development versus post-development flow balance and mitigates any downstream impacts. 4, an on-site septic approval is required as per applicable provincial acts and regulations. 5, potable water supply and service through privately owned drilled well as per Clean Water Act. 6, a hold harmless agreement to protect the town, to make the property and homeowners aware of the responsibilities associated with the private driveway that does not front a municipal street, and highlights the concerns from fire, police, and ambulance and the importance of unobstructed access. 7, the hold harmless agreement to incorporate a clause whereby it's recognized by the eventual landowner that investment made in construction of the private street will not be compensated for by the town during construction or upgrade a street to municipal standards. 8, LPP obligations are met through the land dedication under Phase 2 for the construction of a pedestrian trail to connect the Old Lambs Ferry Road with Model Farm Road or the general location thereto, and or other land for public purposes uses as established in the subdivision bylaw. 9, filing fees in the amount of $230 for a subdivision plan of more than 2 single lot. 10, the development of a private street in the lots must comply with all applicable town bylaws and policies thereto. 11, item 11, phase 2, that the variance be granted of street grade of 9.5% as it exceeds the requirement of 8%.
Thank you, Brent. Can I have a seconder for that? Mark?
A second.
On the question, please vote. Motion carried by a vote of 5-0. 5 to 7 business days, you'll have a letter in the mail, Rick. Congratulations, please work with the town and the neighbors and hopefully that development beside you to get agreements in place so that everything can move forward. Thank you very much. Move on to item 7E, Woods of Foresters Cove, Phase 2 Tentative Subdivision Plan. Could the applicant please come up to the podium? Dwight, do you want to introduce the item, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, again, the planning department has received a subdivision plan, a tentative subdivision plan, looking at the creation of 2 lots in a rural zone. In addition to the creation of 2 lots, it's looking at extension of a public street by approximately 54 meters or so to provide service to these lots. The development is located as an extension of Woods of Foresters Cove, which has been developed over the past couple of years. This is sort of a straightforward subdivision plan. In terms of the reason it's before PAC, it's because it's creating a public street, and any public street that's created in accordance with the subdivision bylaw as well as Community Planning Act must be reviewed prior to approval by the development officer as well as prior to council granting assent. The other element in this particular development is that land for public purposes, the request is to provide, fulfill those obligations through cash in lieu versus land. The subdivision bylaw requires that any subdivision adjacent to the Kennebecasis River or a tributary thereto, the subdivision bylaw says that land must be taken in order to go cash in lieu and then ultimately make a recommendation to council to accept cash in lieu. The Planning Advisory Committee must grant a variance from that particular section and deem it reasonable that cash in lieu be accepted at this point in time versus land.
Thank you, Dwight. Mr. Roberts, you would received the same package we did. Anything you'd like to add or discuss prior to questions? No. Perfect. Any members of PAC have any questions for Mr. Roberts? None being, is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions? Mr. Goslin.
Mr. Chairman, put a motion forward to approval of the Wood of Forester Cove Phase 2 tentative plan. 1, the extension of the existing public street with construction to the municipal standard. Number 2, the granting of a foundation elevation variance for lot number 19. Number 3, approval of the LPP variance for section 6J of the Town of Quispamsis subdivision bylaw 035. Recommend option to satisfy the LPP requirement. And if I may, and I check with Dwight, so should we have a whole harmless agreement for lot number 19 because it's below street level?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as I wrote the staff report, that was something I considered and started and removed and put back and removed. Yeah, and I think, I don't know if I ended up putting in there or not, but when you look at the elevation of the street down to the road is significant. There's no way you're gonna have a house that's above a meter. So at this stage, if PAC feels that it's reasonable just to put a blanket in there to say that a variance is gonna be granted because the first floor elevation will be below the road, as well as put in a requirement at this stage that basically says that prior to any building permit issued for lot 19, that watercourse and Department of Environment, wetland, watercourse would have to obviously review and see if that's applicable. So it would be reasonable, given the topography of the land, given how much the elevation differences that PAC, if they feel it's reasonable and are not requiring a specific site plan specific to that building of that lot, development of that lot, then from a planning perspective, at this stage, when I look at that particular lot and look at the topography and the contours, it would be reasonable to grant a foundation elevation variance and to request a whole allowance agreement rather than having the applicants come back.
Mark, you okay with that? Can you add that in?
Perfect, please, yeah.
Yep. Do I have a seconder on that?
I'll second that.
On the question, please vote. Motion carried by a vote of 5-0. Next 5 to 7 business days, you'll have a letter in the mail. Please get all necessary documentation signed and work with the town. Thank you very much. Thank you. You're welcome. Is the applicant back online for that item 7C? Do you know? Just go back to that one. Is the applicant online for 232935 Bridgeford Drive? Can you hear us? We can't hear you. We can't hear you. Is it Tony? Is that his name? Tony, we can't hear you on our end. I don't know if there's something on your end, but we'll delay it again till the end. We'll move on to item 7F. Gondola Point Park, Phase 12. Dwight, can the applicant please come up to the podium? And we'll have Dwight introduce the topic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The application and the plan that's before PAC is looking for lot width variances. As I've indicated in my staff report, we've received a revised plan for Gondola Point Park Phase 12. In this particular case, this plan came before PAC in July, again looking for recommendations prior to approval. Subsequent to that plan, the developer had received an interest in lot 14C. And given the house, the design of the house, it was going to present some challenges in terms of meeting the standard setbacks, as well as one of the options that was considered was reducing the public utility easement width from 5 to 4 meters. So after exploring various options in terms of consolidating existing lots or lots on the original plan, looked at reducing the easement width. Obviously the easement width from 5 meters to 4 meters was rejected by NV Power. So we start looking at what are the other options. And the developer proposed to adjust the lot width of lot 14C and then seek minor variances on the remaining lots. So as indicated in my staff report, the variances that are required are in the range of 0.4 meters to 0.5 meters. So just over a foot and a half, if you will, on each of those lots. So going from a 30-meter lot width down to a 29.5, when we look at the lot depths, the lot depths are greater than the minimum of 38, which means you still have that significant lot area to allow for construction of the proposed development in those particular lots, which is single-family residential homes. Also, sort of looking forward, the developer recognized that there may be interest in a couple of other corner lots in there. Under the previous plan, what is now identified as Bet Lane was just identified as a future street. So they're also requesting approval of that particular street name and public street to provide alternate access to a couple of lots on the subdivision plan. From a planning perspective and development perspective, we don't have any concerns in terms of the impacts that those minor variances would have on the overall functionality of those lots, given they still carry significant lot area. And this particular area is sewer service, where the minimum lot area is 1,140 square meters. These lots exceed that requirement. So this stage, looking for PAC's approval or recommendations regarding granting of variances, as well as the actual street name and the proposed public street, Bet Lane.
Thanks, Dwight. Mr. Roberts, you would have received the same package we did. Anything you'd like to add or discuss prior to questions from PAC or members of the public? Okay. Any members of PAC have any questions for the applicant? None being, is there anyone in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, is there anyone in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Mr. Preston?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion the Planning Advisory Committee approve the revised tentative plan for Gondola Point Phase 12, subject to the following. 1, lot width variance for lots 15-C to 19-C in the amounts of lot 15-C 0.4 meters, lot 16-C 0.5 meters, lot 17-C 0.5 meters, lot 18-C 0.5 meters, lot 19-C 0.5 meters. 2, approve the proposed street name of Betty Lane and the proposed layout in connection to the remnant portion of PID 302-74633. And 3, all other conditions of the previous approval remain in effect as detailed in the notice of decisions dated July 16th, 2021.
Can I have a seconder on that, please? Mr. Bishop?
I'll second that.
On the question, Brenda? No? Okay, can we please vote? Thank you. Motion carried by a vote of 5-0. 5 to 7 business days, you have a letter in the mail. Please work with the town, get all necessary paperwork filed, and best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Chrissy, any luck with that 7C? No? Okay. So we can wait till the end, or we can table that item? So what do you want to do, folks? Try again at the end? And if not, we'll table it till next meeting. Okay, perfect. We'll move on to item 7G. Maybe you can let the applicant know that, Chrissy, that if we can't hear him, we'll have to table till next meeting. Thank you. Highlands of Queenberry subdivision, phase 6-7, tentative plan. Could the applicant please come up to the podium and in the meantime, we'll get Dwight to introduce that one. Dwight, do you want to?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Highlands of Queensberry Phase 6, 7. Again, the planning department has received the subdivision application for the continued development of Highlands of Queensberry. This particular case, for the development proposes the subdividing and creating of 23 lots as well as land for public purposes in the area. Land for public purposes is proposed for trail development as well as to aid in stormwater management, respecting some natural drainage areas in the particular parent parcel. The streets would be the extension of an existing public street, Gail Morgan Drive. Under Phase 6, under Phase 7 is the introduction of a new street, Abbeywood Close. As noted in my staff report, there's a couple of variances required with respect to lot depth variances. Lots 43, 44, 45 under Phase 6. Lots 73, 76, and 79 under Phase 7. Again, when we look at lot variances, whether to the width or depth, we take into consideration the minimum lot area that's required. In this particular case, the minimum lot area is 1,140 square meters. And then we look at would it be reasonable to anticipate that the lot could still support a single-family residential home with the setbacks being met, the minimum setbacks. In this particular case, it appears that that would be reasonable. We're also looking for a street right-of-way width variance for Abbeywood. The minimum standard in the subdivision bylaw is 20 meters wide. In this particular case, the proposed development is looking at reducing the straight right-of-way width down to 18 meters to allow for obviously reduction in width and address being able to move some of the lots reflective of the drainage through the area. In 18 meters, we can still accommodate the required street, actually driving surface area. As always, one of the things that we look at as part of the stormwater management plan is what is the proposed stormwater management system that's in there, making sure that everything can be accommodated within 18 meters. So if it's a closed system, it's usually not a concern. If it's a open ditch system, then we have to look at ditch depths and then slopes from the ditch bottom of the ditch back to the street right away. So that's sort of the driving factor there. We're also looking for a street length variance. The length of Abbeywood Close is more than 183 meters, based on my measurements. Haven't received official engineering plans for that particular cul-de-sac. You can extend a length up to 225 provided there's some sort of pedestrian trails or connectivity to adjacent streets in the particular subdivision. In this particular case, there's a land for public purposes proposed that's going to be abutting an existing land for public purposes where we find an existing trail, as well as in the future, there's going to be a land for public purposes connection out to a future public street. So those are the items that are taken into consideration when you're looking at extending beyond 183 meters.
Is it Dwight?
So in this
Oh,
particular
sorry.
case, as indicated in the submission from the developer, obviously under Phase 6, again, there's communications with the Department of Environment with respect to what are the wetlands and what are the requirements. It's indicated that an application has been applied for Phase 7 because obviously there's some natural drainage channels in there that the developer wishes to protect. And so they have to get approvals in terms of how do you work around those particular areas. We anticipate that would be forthcoming. The current work that's underway in terms of with respect to Phase 6 is outside of any of those wetland areas or drainage paths and courses that are under the jurisdiction of the Department of Environment. Those public street names obviously have been checked and there's no concerns. The existing Gail Morgan Drive is obviously an approved name, so it's just an extension under Phase 6. Under phase 7, there's Abbeywood Close. And again, that's been checked and there's no conflicts. One of the things that has been recommended in terms of with respect to the streets and a couple of lots, they're with respect to the lots adjacent to Abbeywood Close. Just looking for the, bear with me here. So with respect to lot 71 and 72, one of the concerns we have is basically when you look at the offset distance from the end of Gail Morgan Drive to Abbeywood, when you look at the potential to have 2 street intersections with Dunraven in the future, and then you could potentially have 2 driveways in that particular area. One of the recommendations that we're looking at is having phase 6 actually develop to the back of 72, so that means that that portion of Abbeywood could be constructed and it would provide an alternate access for driveways into 72. So rather than having an intersection, a potential driveway to 71, a potential driveway to 72, and then another street, that could cause some sort of conflicts with respect to traffic movements, and it just makes it a little cleaner if one of those driveways, the recommendation would be to 72, that they would come off of Abbeywood under phase 6. The lots, the actual development is going to be serviced by municipal sewer, connecting to the existing system, obviously based on Atlantic wastewater guidelines, and that sort of governs the designs of the system. There's no anticipated overcapacity existing system. Obviously, stormwater management plan would have to be submitted, and what's been submitted looks at using the natural drainage channels, which is something that the town, in terms of our stormwater management plan, strongly supports. So rather than rerouting drainage channels, use them to aid in the development and protection of the water through the development. That would include also reducing or eliminating as much as you can the amount of trees that are being cut. So that includes around those drainage channels. And then one of the benefits of reducing your right-of-way widths are down. Actually, again, you're saving some vegetation to aid in stormwater management. All the stormwater management so far that we've seen in terms of phase 6 and phase 7 will be going into the stormwater retention pond through a closed system, which has been reviewed through the engineering side of things. Comprehensive, obviously, water source supply assessment will be required to support the level of development because we have 23 lots with a remnant capable of supporting more than that. So the plan that's before PAC, the focus is 6 and 7. It shows all the way out to 10, which provides obviously some connection to Queensberry Drive. From a planning perspective, we're looking at what are the ultimate traffic concerns that we have to take into consideration. As part of that process, we are engaged both from an engineering department and a planning department, looking at traffic calming measures being designed and planned for as we move through this process. One of the things that sort of over time in terms of development is we have, when you look at Queensberry Drive, it is identified as a collector street, minor collector, and so you get heavier traffic, which means we have to do studies and look at what are some reasonable traffic calming measures and those types of things. Looking at potentially in the future that this would be a connector, so not of a collector level, but it would be an alternate route to go from Queensberry to Vincent. We're looking at, as we go through this process, what are some of the traffic calming measures that we would see on Gail Morgan as well as Dunraven all the way up to Queensberry to address those particular concerns. So we continue to do traffic studies along Queensberry and the Vincent Road area, and we'll look at that as part of this process. But in terms of what's being sought for approval under phase 6 and 7, that's sort of the 8, 9, and 10 is where you're going to start seeing more of the emphasis on looking at the traffic calming measures. But it would be obviously part of the design process as we move forward. So the plan is before PAC because obviously we were creating public streets and land for public purposes. And as I stated earlier, any plan that creates public streets and land for public purposes has to be reviewed by the Planning Advisory Committee to make recommendations to the development officer prior to approval, as well as recommendations to council prior to assent with respect to their support or concerns regarding a plan. In this particular case, we're also looking at variances in terms of lot depth variances, street width, right-of-way width variances, as well as a street length variance. Open to questions as you move through the process.
Thank you, Dwight. Mr. Turner, you would have received the same package. Anything you'd like to add or discuss prior to members of PAC or the public asking some questions and concerns? You probably would have received all the emails, notifications also?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
I have. Chairman, committee members, Rick Turner on behalf of the development. I'd like to set a tone here. So what I'm going to do is go back and explain a little bit about Phase 5, which we're just finishing up on. Before we did Phase 5, years before we did Phase 5, the things about stormwater attenuation were very real. Some municipalities were enforcing them, some not. What we did is we talked to adjoining owners and, look, if we were to do a pond, would you come together with us and do it as a joint venture? So that joint venture is how the pond on Vincent Road, which you, I'm sure, have all seen, that's how that got created. Our share of that pond was well over $100,000 spent 10 years ago, roughly. So we're serious about the development and doing it right. The second thing, to control drainage and stuff off of this property, what we've got is oversized piping, concrete oversized piping, very expensive to put in. I'm sure that there were other ways we could have done things, but we chose to go that route, and that was probably another $100,000 or more extra. Once we got to the point of actually doing the development, we filed for the environmental permits. The same thing we had to do for the pond is there had to be a permit through the Environment Department. So we got our permits pre-construction, worked with the Environment Department, and most times to get them on site, we had to call them. We didn't find that they were coming out to monitor a lot, but they did by times. So anytime there was a storm event, if we had some silt escaping some way, we just call them and say, here, this is what we're going to do to mitigate this. And, you know, we reserve one lot right now, and that lot will be reserved until the street is paved. It's a lot near the entrance, and it's a perfect holding area so that silt and stuff doesn't get on into the attenuation pond. To reinforce diligence on this, we're working with one builder. That one builder, we've asked them, anytime you're doing anything, if it's even remotely close to the land for public purposes, which we reserved for, you know, the stream protection, but even though he's adjacent and away from the stream, and actually keeping some trees on the lots, file for a permit for each lot. And he's done that, and those permits were issued. And we intend to do the same thing through the rest of the development. We intend to, if things continue to work as well as they are, continue working with the same builder. When we did previous phases of Queensbury, we did some of the lower section of Queensbury Drive. We contacted one builder. We worked with that builder through the endurance of the project, give us a little extra control of things, and we could see that things were being done right. When we did Birmingham, things have worked out good with that builder. We continued on, and he did a build out of Birmingham. Then we moved up to the next street, which is an extension of Colchester. Well, what ended up in Colchester is there was a different builder owned the land at the end of the proposed street. So we approached him, worked with him through that whole phase. So that's the way we're doing it. We're doing it in a way that we have ultimate control over things and do our best to see that it gets done right. The comments about the intersection of Abbey Wood, I haven't talked to the builder yet. We talked with him on about each individual site, but I see no problem with moving those culverts onto Abbey Wood, for instance. And the other lot, we can actually forego it until the next phase, put the culvert in on the other street face where there's more room. So I guess that's just some opening comments for the committee. If you've got any questions, I can try to address them. I look forward to hearing what people here have to say, and I'll address that accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Any members of PAC have any questions for the applicant? None being, anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Okay. Come on up and state your name for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Stephen Hutchison. I reside at 4 Angel Lane. I and several other neighboring property owners have submitted letters of concern by email. You have my email of September the 14th. I won't repeat it. I assume you all have that. I would also note that after we were advised that the plans had been scaled back to simply 6 and 7, that one of my neighboring property owners, Julian Raby, took some aerial photos and submitted them by email on September the 12th. I hope the members of the committee have those photographs. Do they?
I don't know.
No, they were arrived after the package was put together, but they were given to planning department for their review, and they may be available for.
Well, hopefully they are available. So anyway, notwithstanding the fact that this project's been scaled back to phases 6 and 7, we all know that ultimately they intend to build the whole thing. My concerns, and I think my neighboring property owners' concerns about particularly the impact on groundwater and the impact on trees remain. Particularly, I believe, bylaw 35, section 7. So one of the things I wanted to mention is, if you've seen my email, you've seen the reference to the 2008 CWSSA report and the conclusions of that report, which I'm just going to briefly refer to. We believe, this is from Hughes, sorry, just a sec here, this is from Fundy Engineering. We believe that the residential lot sizes in Quispamsis are often smaller than what is typical in a rural setting. Based upon the considerable and continued growth in the community, we are unable to determine what the overall impacts on the ground aquifers will be. Fundy Engineering considers the development density in Quispamsis to be high for continued growth and reliability of individual groundwater wells. Aquifer mining is likely occurring and is probably going to be a concern as residential densities continue to increase in the face of no municipal water distribution system. We believe that it is prudent for the town to develop a municipal water system, and developers and homeowners must be aware of the potential for water shortages. We make no guarantee that water quantity and quality will not change from the conditions described here, either now or in the future. That report, which I requested from staff, is a 2008 report, 13 years ago. What has been done to address the concerns of that report? When I first learned of this development, I contacted the secretary. I asked for copies of the CC or the CWSSA and any other reports submitted. That's the only report that I received, none other. Yet, when I looked at the last approval, which I also received from the secretary, the approval for the 2018 phase 5 to 10, that approval specifically required a comprehensive water source and supply assessment to be submitted and reviewed by the town prior to final plan approvals and any construction. Where's the 2018 report? I presume there was none submitted. Has the situation improved or changed since 2008? I think not. Do the residents of the town of Quispamsis even know about those 2008 concerns? I've not seen anything. Another concern, I've referred to the 2018 decision that called for the report that I haven't seen, which I presume then doesn't exist. On September the 12th, my neighbor, Julian Raby, submitted some aerial photographs, which hopefully you'll have access to, or you'll take the time to look. Here are the phases 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Hello?
There is an aerial photograph of what's been cut to date.
I can't hear you, Tim.
Sorry. So, no problem. This is what's been cut. So, my lot is here. Julian Raby's lot is here. This is 6. This is 7. This is phase 8. Into phase 8 already behind Julian's lot. Now, I'm a lawyer. I'm not a planner. But I have read your bylaw that says, no, this is bylaw 35, section 7. No approval of a subdivision plan shall be given unless, in the opinion of council, the developer has made adequate arrangements by way of agreement, whereby 1, only such trees as directly impede the construction of buildings and services may be destroyed. And where any trees must be destroyed, the developer shall replace them. Now, aside from that, can we go back to that photograph? All of the trees that have been cut up here in 6, here in 8, there in 7, how did they get cut before there was any approval for construction? And how could you possibly say that only trees that directly impede the construction of building and services may be destroyed when there's been no approval for any construction at all? Now, we can't change the past, but we can at least address it in terms of the future. I've looked at the staff report that was provided in support, or I guess you could say in relation to this plan. And I note that the staff report indicates that yet another CWSSA is required. That's a good thing. But interestingly enough, the staff report says a CWSSA must be submitted to the town prior to the issuing of building permits. Don't we think we should have the CWSSA before they cut any more trees? Because bylaw 35 says you can't cut trees unless it's necessary for construction. How can it be necessary for construction when there's no approval of any plan? And specifically, if there is to be another CWSSA, I would ask that the town specifically require that those authors address the conclusion of the 2008 report. Has it changed or not? And if it hasn't changed, what's the impact of this development on my wells and on my neighbor's wells? Are we going to run out of water? What's my property going to be worth with a dry well? Not much. Secondly, I note, by the way, that in 2018, the CWSSA was required prior to any construction, prior to final approval of a plan and prior to any construction. The proposal now is prior to the approval of a building permit? That's, I think a lot later in the process and should not be granted at all. And I also note number 8 at the very end of the staff report, clearing of the area for construction purposes to be conducted in accordance with zoning bylaw 35, section 7. I remind you of the photograph. The trees are already cut. The trees are already gone. They're not going to regrow themselves. So, in conclusion, pending a complete study looking at that 2008 report and addressing the concerns in that 2008 report, this proposal should be rejected, or ultimately it should be deferred pending a full investigation, including retaining any experts that are necessary to properly advise this committee on this serious concern about the impact on the groundwater and the fact that trees are being cut. In my humble opinion, you can ask for your own legal opinion, and I suggest you do that. How can you cut trees in accordance with section 7 of bylaw 35 when there's been no construction approved? Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson.
Do you want me to wipe this microphone off? I didn't see anybody else do that, so.
Sure.
Good?
Is there anything there? No, we're good. Any other members of the public or online willing to speak for or against this item? Please come up and state your name for the record, please. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Krista Wetmore, and I'm a resident of Queensberry Drive. I'd just like to bring to your attention that I spent an hour last evening with the police. Somebody was speeding down the street, lost control of their vehicle, tore up my grass, skidded tire marks across my pavement, and took out a few shrubs on the way through. Speeding is an issue on Queensberry Drive. I would like perhaps to just clarify my take on it, and I know it keeps being referred to as a minor collector. However, I would like to remind PAC that it is a 40-kilometer-an-hour speed zone. There's 30 school-age children between the two traffic circles. There's no sidewalks, there's no curbs, and it's dangerous. I guess my question would be, Friday afternoon, we received notice from Violet that the tentative plan was changed to remove phases 8, 9, and 10. When will that be back up on the agenda for public discussion?
That's up for the developer. We'll get the developer to answer that question. Maybe he comes back up.
Sure.
That's phases what, 6 to 10, you're saying? 7?
8
to 10.
8, 9, 10.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I know we're only speaking about phases 6 and 7 this evening. However, the plan itself and the tentative plan does include phases 6 to 10. And as this previous speaker had mentioned, plans are already in place for the remaining phases. I guess my concern would be, as a resident, not only myself, but my neighbors as well. We've submitted concerns and questions last week, is that delaying our voice and our opportunity to speak and voice our concerns about this as the subdivision continues to be developed lessens our chances of, I guess, being heard. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Please state your name.
I live at 6 Angel Lane.
What was your name again?
Lindsay Burke.
Lindsay Burke?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say I agree with Stephen here. The drinking water is kind of the most important thing. If you don't have it, you've got nothing. Your property's worth nothing. So anyway, I just want to make sure there is an assessment done before development goes any further. And as long as we get that, we'll see where it goes from there. All right, thank you.
Any other person in the audience want to speak for or against this item? Please state your name for the record.
Daniel Dean, 179 Vincent Road, and I agree with these guys here, same thing. The drinking water is the issue, and if that's addressed and looked at, then see where the rest goes.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience willing to speak for or against this item?
It's Roberta Burke from 5 Angel Lane. Everything that Stephen has says, I totally agree with, especially the drinking water and the cutting of the trees.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, is anyone else in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? None being, could Mr. Turner come back up the podium, please? And maybe, Rick, between yourself and Dwight, maybe we can address some of the questions and concerns by the neighbors, if you don't mind.
Certainly.
To the best of your ability. Thank you.
I've got the correspondence I received, which no specific order, but the first one, Megan McLaughlin, is talking about the Queensbury Drive speeding, things of that nature. As we advance, I have no problem speaking with people on this stuff, give a perspective, get their perspective, get the town's perspective. If there's traffic calming or no interconnection allowed, whatever, hey, we can work with that. So we're certainly open to any of those kinds of discussions. Susan Neal, I guess that's the... Oh, yes. Susan Neal, I guess that's, again, things about the connection of the street. We can come to that at a later time. Mr. Hutchinson, through the chair, I did make a commitment once we get up closer to his property that I would approach him and go through things. He made some good points back at the virtual meeting we had, and I guess we're getting a chance to discuss it more out in the open than face to face, but that commitment still stands. I can meet with him at any time. I have no problem with that. As far as when we might get to those phases, it's probably 2 to 3 years out would be my guess. And again, if it's 2 years out that we get to phase 8, it could be another 2 or 3 years before we advance up towards Queensbury. So all this stuff will have to be vetted out before that. The stormwater, there was questions about the stormwater study. One hadn't been done or something. As far as the drinking water.
Yeah, 2018.
Yes. The drinking water in the year we started down by Vincent Road, we were only doing just a handful of lots. And the approval that was given exempted us from doing that until we started looking for building permits on phase 6, which we're talking about now. So you'll find that that is in the minutes from that time. Phase 5, we were exempt. We're arranging to do that now. As far as we'll be doing it off the wells that have been drilled for existing homes. Out of 4 wells that have been drilled for the 3 wells that have been drilled for the 3 homes that are under construction or 1 just occupied, 2 of those wells are artesian. What they have to do is actually put some other device down into the well to control that flow so it's not an overflow condition. So I have no doubt that there's going to be plenty of groundwater when the study's done. It's a pump test and done under provincial guidelines, and the report has to follow provincial guidelines. With regard to lot size, there's some wording here that I'll just quickly go through it. Lots and blocks in any proposed subdivision are to be of standards including widths and depths not to prejudice existing subdivisions in the immediate area. Angel Lane, which Mr. Hutchison is referring to, it's really not what I would call a subdivision as we know it. There's some very large lots done on a private road that was not done to standard. And I guess they're calling now on the town to do work on that. So the large lots in there are an anomaly. Most of the subdivisions in that area were very comparable to those. So that's my comments on the lot size concerns. In Fundy Engineering's report, okay, I'll again just read something here. Aquifer mining is likely occurring and is probably going to be a concern as residential densities continue to increase in the face of no municipal water distribution system. 2008 report. Now the town is routinely doing capital projects extending a municipal system through the town. There's the water tower out on the back street, Downsview, I think it's called. So there's a water tower and distribution system, and the town has certainly done studies of the aquifer. So I think that addresses what the Fundy Engineering report were saying at the time. You should start working towards a water system, and the town is. Now, the other thing, that whole paragraph in Fundy's report, the provincial guidelines for doing these assessments, you know, the assessment was done in accordance with them, and you'll find other ones done throughout the town. That qualifying statement, or I'll call it a cover your butt statement, that's no different than you would find in accounting, doing year-end statements, notice to reader, and sort of a, look, there could be something that might happen here, but everything is kosher at that point in time with them. Hydrologists, engineers, accountants, those kind of things you'll find very, very often. Maybe lawyers use them too, I don't know. But nevertheless, the wording is in there as a caution, and the town is acting on it. And I presume they'll continue to do that as years go by. So I've covered the Phase 5, we were exempt because it was just a few lots. We're in the process right now, that further report on stormwater. The fourth house is going in, and we're going to use those 4 to do the well test and stuff for Phase 6. As far as Phase 6, we have approved drawings from the town to proceed with that. We had a tentative approval to proceed with it. What's happened, tentative approval is good for 1 year. When it come to wanting to do the developer's agreement, we had some hiccups with, well, I guess Dwight can explain it better, but whether it was COVID or what, it ended up with the election, sorry. Because of the election and because of things getting jammed up, the developer's agreement didn't get signed, okay? Wasn't our intention not to have it signed. We just were a victim of circumstances, I'll put it. A victim was put out pretty considerable money towards this development. So the work we've done, that has been done under approved drawings, approved by the town, approved for construction. What happened is we were adding 1 lot onto that, so we figured, okay, we'll add 1 lot on. We'll only do the construction up to where we had the approval, and we'll add on the 1 lot because there was an interested party. And that would be Phase 6. We decided to go to Phase 7 on Abbeywood as the next phase because we could see, okay, there's concerns up further along in the development, so we'll work with people to try to address those. I'm going to go to the map for a moment.
Okay.
Phase 5. Phase 5 is this section of the street. It's all approved, being built out pretty much now. Phase 6. Phase 7. If we head that photograph up again, you find in phase 7 that it's all pretty green. Because even before that bylaw, and then on the,
It's up there now, Rick. It's up there now.
here. No, why is that all cleared? That's cleared because what we did is we went in and we had this cleared and that cleared back around the time the pond was done. Continuation pond, our $100,000 plus expenditure. We were at that time going to start doing the development. But if you look at the economy back at that point in time, all of a sudden it wasn't very bright. So we backed off of it. And that's why you'll find this is looking pretty green. This here, there was very little trees there involved because it had all been cleared. It was just shrubbery, greenery that had come up. We did clear a little bit right here for a place on the side where the equipment could be parked and moved around and, you know, fill, rock fill and stuff for the trenching, place to store. So this is all looks brown because what we did go in and grub that. Took out the overburden, stockpiled it off to one side. And that's why you're looking at this. We did not do any kind of clearing up in here because we seen that being a long ways off. So so we didn't advance into that area. Everyone could hear me okay there?
Yep.
Some of the changes that we've made in the new design, they were done to address potential environmental conflicts with drainage areas and stuff. So I looked at it as, okay, we're doing the engineering, we kind of see how we can work around that stuff. Let's redo that engineering, rejig it, and come up with something that works better and it's sensitive to those issues. Those issues are more in phase 8, some in 9, none in 10. But we intentionally went back and actually re-engineered that whole section, not to a detailed design, but to a preliminary design so we knew what we were working with. I've talked about the preferred builder, and we certainly hope to continue on that way because it's the best way to carry out a development and have some kind of control over it. The last couple of comments I have. There was the suggestion, sorry, Mr. Chairman, I should go back to the map for this. There's a suggestion, take these lots out. So it happens to be all the lots bordering the Angel Lane property. And take the road and move it over here, which would mean you're running roads up both sides of lots. That's not something you generally would ever see because the costs are outrageous. You can never make it work. But the whole thing is I can see the whole attempt here just to keep that green space in behind the properties. And, you know, we're not obligated to provide a forested area for people. We've got a zoning, we're meeting those zoning criteria and developing it, I would say, very responsibly. The Environment Department, when they come out, they're quite pleased with what they see. We've had the engineering department there before and after storms, and just asked them, look, we just want to show you what we're doing here. And I've actually gotten the comment, I wish all the developers were approaching it the same way. There's something in here sort of doing a comment that maybe we're going to do exactly what happened on another development out by the highway, which I'm sure the committee's very familiar with. Well, I think I've just proved we're not taking that kind of approach whatsoever. Let's see, we have Jensen, Burke. There's a couple of others that, again, are just referring to Mr. Hutchinson's letter, saying they agree with what he's been saying. And then resident 2 Angel Lane, I guess they're talking about Angel Lane, and you know it's not up to snuff. It's not performing well and stuff like that. Well, I've said it's a private road. It's one of those things that it wasn't ever intended to become public. The grades on it, things like that, they really don't work. But in any event, we're not trying to do anything with what happened on Angel Lane, not whatsoever.
I think you addressed them all. Oh, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, very, very quickly on Crystal Wetmore's, the speeding issues. I mean, we're willing to discuss anything, as I said. Building covenants, she's asked about building covenants. The home that's built there now, the first one that was started, it's just under 2,000 square feet, 3-car garage, fully completed basement. And the basement is a walkout area, so it's very, very well done, very tasteful. The house next to it is going to be very similar in size, 3-car garage, fully finished basement. The one across the street from that, it meets our covenants. Our covenants call for a minimum of 1,700 square feet on a single level and with attached garage. There are other covenants there, but what we're going to do is we're going to carry them out through the development, maybe adjust them a little where we see necessity because of whatever might come up, but phase by phase, we will relook at them and assign them. In phase 6 and 7, I can see we're going to leave them pretty much exactly the same. Willing to share those covenants with anyone who would like to have a look at them. So I think that speaks to the questions about market value, even though we're not up towards Queensbury. How will the walking trails be affected? In our proposal, there's a section of the walking trail in there now that it's extremely safe. To me, it's just, you wouldn't dare go through there in the winter. And that's when you leave Queensbury and you go down a very, very steep hill. Because that's just when the town started the trail down by the pond we constructed, they come up through and wanted to connect to Queensbury. We've got an area that we can adjust where that trail goes, get rid of that steep part. We can make it so it's going to be very convenient to walk, take a stroller, or whatever. Right now, it's challenging. So we've looked at the trail that the town has. We've looked at ways to improve it. We had talks with Mr. Coleman, plus the engineering department on that, and they're quite pleased with what we were suggesting. Now, obviously, they're in later phases. We've got to get there. They're not in the phases we're doing or asking for right now. Times of the street connection, that's definitely going to be based on the economy going forward. I think I've covered as best I can any of the issues and stuff. And again, most of what I see here are concerns with later phases. The water thing we're addressing, that'll be submitted before there be any building permits on phase 6. Phase 6 and 7, I think, are, probably the least of the concerns of the people here, other than just what the water tests show. If there's any questions by the committee, I'll certainly try to address them.
Thank you, Rick. Mr. Turner. PAC members have any questions for Mr. Turner or city or town staff? Darren?
Yes, I have a question. So, Mr. Turner, when do you feel that the CWSSA report will be complete?
The additional well is supposed to be drilled right after there's a foundation goes in. This is on the approved registered lots. So if that's done, they have to backfill the foundation. I would say 2 to 3 weeks, roughly.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Turner, one comment and then a question. Talking about that walking trail from Queensberry down to the Vixen Road, I use it regularly, and not sure if it's going to be on my bum or my face, but yes, I do go down there. It's very steep. But when reading the emails that came in, it would become very obviously that the people on Angel Lane just want that green space, take those, lots out and make it a green space for them. But have they approached the owner of the property to see if they could buy those lots at fair market value so they don't have to worry about the development?
I guess I won't get into who, but we've been approached by someone in that area. I won't say that it's on Angel Lane or where it is, but what they did is, would like to look at 1 or 2 of those lots. We basically left it that we're going to talk to our preferred builder, and if he says, yeah, okay, I don't mind under certain conditions. The lots aren't planned to be built on for some time. Yeah. So he figured, okay, yeah, go ahead. If the person wants to buy them, he can buy them. So the lots are for sale,
yes,
if I could put it that way. We wouldn't be selling them without looking at a cost that reflects what it's going to cost to put the road through there, yes, which is what we did with 2 owners up at the head of Queensberry Drive. 2 property owners who are represented here tonight approached us and said, look, we'd like to buy that lot in behind us. We looked at something, looked at the cost, and figured, well, okay, we figure it's going to cost about so much per lot getting up around there. Here's the price. If you're looking for a discount, it's not there because at some point in time we've got a road to build. We've got services to put in. But in that case, it was before the builder come on board, so we just come to an agreement. Those lots have been conveyed to those 2 property owners. If someone else were to approach us, no problem. We're open to that discussion and open. Now, the covenants would most definitely go with any sale because those covenants are extremely important to us to basically protect our investment.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Turner? I guess I have a question for Dwight. Was there a CWSSA required, Dwight, in 2018? Or that got deferred because of the split up of the subdivision plan, or do you know?
So if the original, so when we receive subdivision applications, we look at the number of lots and the overall development. So the subdivision bylaw says that if you have a subdivision development that's 10 lots or less, then there's no abbreviated or comprehensive study required. Once you get between 10 and 24 plus the remnant, then you have to do an abbreviated. Anything 24 and above, including the remnant, you would have to do a comprehensive study. So once the subdivision was scaled back, then according to our subdivision bylaw, that is not required in terms of a study. However, when we look at this particular phase, then yes, then a comprehensive study is required. If I can just very quickly go over just some comments regarding water and comprehensive studies and those types of things. In terms of density levels and in terms of what was pointed out in terms of Fundays or the report, the comment in the report. When you look at the subdivision when you look at the subdivision regulations from the province, the regulations from the province says that if you have a subdivision that's serviced by public sewer system, your minimum lot size is 690 square meters. Our minimum lot size for a sewer service subdivision is 1,140. Okay, so that's a significant difference between 690 and 1,140. So in terms of density, we're actually not as dense as what we possibly could be if we were to follow sewer service 690 square meter lots. When we look at rural, the comment was that the density is relatively high for a rural area. When we look at rural is non-sewer service, non-water service, so it's basically a septic and a well. The province requires 4,000 square meters, 54 meters of lot width. We mirror that. So if you're living in an area or subdivision that's not serviced by sewer or water, it's 4,000 square meters, which reflects provincial requirements. Our density minimum lot sizes for sewer service is higher than the provincial requirements. The town has undertaken lots of things in terms of keeping an eye and monitoring what's happening in terms of our groundwater. 2011, there was a comprehensive hydrogeological modeling study that was done that looked at the municipality as a whole, that looked at where are we with respect to water, groundwater, what is our capacities, what impacts are having of all the wells that are being drilled in. So council and staff and in terms of being aware of the level of development and the reliance on groundwater has taken steps. One of those was in 2011 when a groundwater modeling study was done that came back and said at this stage there is sufficient water to support the development. However, we need to start looking at and planning for ultimately looking at a municipal system and doing that. Under the municipal plan in 2018, one of the plans that was required was a water distribution and study. That was done. So through CBCL, a water distribution study was done that identified phasing approaches to extending the water system, as well as a cost, as well as identifying additional areas where water towers would be required in order to support the continuing expansion of the water system. We follow the provincial requirements as well as our subdivision bylaws with respect to when comprehensive water studies are done, when abbreviated water studies are done. We follow all those requirements. Every report comes in, it gets read. We look at the approaches that we're taking. We look at where the monitoring wells are installed, where the pumping wells are installed. We look at what is the drawdown time, what is the recharge time. We look at all those reports that come in. I'll just back up to when the hydrogeological model was done by, I believe it was Stantec. We have monitoring wells. So out Quispamsis, there are actually monitoring wells that get read and monitored on an annual basis. We receive reports that indicate what is happening to the groundwater. So the other thing to keep in mind is that it's just not the individual wells. Our water system, municipal system, is actually groundwater based. So we have wells that are sunk on the other side of the Mackay Highway that provide water to our water tower. So all of that is taken into consideration. All that's being monitored on a regular basis, and we receive reports. One of the other things that we've done in terms of municipality, recognizing that we are groundwater based, and it's very valid, the points that have been made. If you don't have groundwater, then there's lots of things that can happen, and there's some catastrophic effects. One of the things that we've done and we're continuing to do, and it's been an initiative and supported by council, and we're pleased at, is that we're going above and beyond looking at what are our local drainage areas, what are our wetlands, what are the areas that are naturally recharge areas of our municipality. The Provincial Department of Environment look at wetlands based on their delineation and look at water courses, and they have a regulation in terms of what happens within 30 meters of those. We've undertaken a project with UNB, and it looks at what are the wet areas, what are the natural areas that you're going to see a high water table. And on the screen, you're going to see areas that are in blue. When we get any development, we identify these as local drainage areas that we instruct the developers to please take into consideration in terms of your development and to protect them. These are natural recharge areas. Recognizing that we're a groundwater-based community, the last thing we want to see is these filled in and piped and all the water getting piped into the river. One of the reasons why you don't see sidewalks to the extent that you would see in some other municipalities in Quispam and their open ditches is simply because of that. It's because we are a groundwater-based community and we look for ways to get water back into the ground as quickly as possible. Above and beyond the cost of having sidewalks and maintaining them as a capital asset, the benefit of having open ditches is that the water actually gets back into the ground as a recharge to help provide water to the aquifers which apply to our groundwater. If we were to put sidewalks everywhere and pipe everything to the river, the way in terms of our development and in terms of the reports that we get back in terms of our comprehensive studies, I would anticipate, and from a professional perspective, they would be a lot different. They would be saying that the water, the continual level of development and the number of wells you're sinking based on the amount of water that's getting back into the aquifer, if you were piping everything, would be completely different. So we have taken significant steps, and we continue to take significant steps from 2008 all the way forward, recognizing the importance of groundwater to our community. So council, through staff, are continuing to monitor development, continuing to monitor these important areas. And in the municipal plan, another project and plan that's scoped is an actual stormwater watershed mapping project that will actually go above and beyond what we have on the screen right now. It will identify all these areas that we need to protect for that particular purpose. At this stage, the reports that we receive through these comprehensive studies indicate that the development, there is sufficient water of quantity and quality to support the level of development. If we were to receive a report that threw a red flag, then no building permits would be issued. So this is private property in terms of the development. So if a developer goes in there and they undertake the work and they put in the services, they cut the right of ways to put in the services, and the report comes back and says, I'm sorry, but the water study indicates there isn't sufficient water to support level development, we don't issue permits. So there is no more wells going in the ground. It stays as it is until that's addressed. So at what stage? Yes, I agree. We would like to see it so that all that's done before the developer moves forward, but we have to recognize that it is private property. In this particular case, there was tentative plans that came in years prior that had lapsed, but as a result of those tentative plans, they undertook an engineering design that came to the engineering department that got reviewed. So those released for construction drawings were based on previous tentative plans, and that's what's currently being followed. So we would like to see a developer who would come in and say, I'm going to do my study and all those types of things and get that in place. But ultimately, the developer's running a risk that if they do the work, they get to the point where they want a building permit and it comes back and says there's no groundwater, there is no building permits. There are no wells being sunk. So you are stuck with the investment that you've made and you can't go any further, right? And ultimately, it is the tool in the toolbox that we have with the most leverage, is that you need a building permit. So until we have all those reports and you demonstrate you're meeting those requirements, we don't issue building permits. So your investment, you can't return on your investment if you're not providing us with the information that we require based on the regulations and the acts set by the province in terms of monitoring groundwater. So there is a lot of checks and balances that are in place. I commend council for their continuing recognizing the importance of groundwater and recognize when these developments come in, all these reports do get presented to council, flagged as whether there's sufficient water or if there are concerns. Ultimately, it's council who makes the final decision. PAC provides recommendations to me as development officer. I bring that to council. Council ultimately makes the final decision whether they want to approve a subdivision or not based on the information that's presented. So there are a lot of things that are happening to that level. So in this particular case, if we were to receive, and yes, a comprehensive water study is required for this phase. If we were to receive a report that said you can't support the level of development, no approvals would be granted, subdivision plan would not be stamped, and I'm not sure how the developer would feel, but I trust that answers your questions.
Thank you, Dwight, for that, clearing up that information and sharing some of the town's involvement with some of those requests. So, with that, is there any other questions from PAC members? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Mr. Bishop?
Yes, I'd like to put a motion forward that the Planning Advisory Committee approve the Highland of Queensberry Phase 6 and 7 tentative plan subject to following conditions. 1, lot depth variances from zoning bylaw 38, section 8C1 be granted for lots 43, 44, 45 under Phase 6, and B, 73 to 76 inclusive, and 79 under Phase 7. 2, a street right-of-way with variance for Abbeywood Close. 3, cul-de-sac street length variance for Abbeywood Close. 4, sustainability of the street layout with regarding to the topography and the connectivity to adjacent lands. And 5, the suitability of the LPP proposed Phase 6 and 7 shown in the plan use the LPP land bank credit toward fulfillment of the LPP obligations and level of the trail development required by the developer to be established prior to the final plans approved.
Have a seconder on that? Brenda?
I second that.
Vote, please. On the question, Dwight, sorry. Go ahead, Dwight.
You got on the question, but I have a question, or I have a comment.
Go ahead.
Just for way of clarification, the recommendations that have come from PAC just address the LPP in the street. However, just to go back to the concerns that were expressed, there are standard conditions that come from the development officer, and those are included in the staff report. And those include a requirement for a comprehensive water study as well as stormwater modeling, as well as engineered designs for the street as well as the sewer system. So just so it's clear that would be a condition of approval.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that at the end. There's
Okay.
standard conditions just for the people, the public that's concerned. As Dwight said, there are those 2 studies that are mandatory. There's 10 other items that are listed, and you'll see that'll be posted on for the document. Once you'd be able to see that online. What are all the other conditions? They're just standard conditions that are applied, and the stormwater study and the water study is required at this point. So, could we please vote? Thank you. A motion carried by a vote of 5-0. Rick, Mr. Turner, in 5 to 7 business days, you have a letter in the mail. Please work with the town, work with the neighbors. And I would, any of the neighbors have any questions, please get in touch with the developer or Mr. Turner and some of all the plans will be available online once they're completed for members of the public to view, so, or contact the town to be able to witness those and see those, so, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For those in attendance, 333-8700. I'm a 24/7 guy. Just note the number if you want to discuss something. I'm an open book. Thank you.
Thank you. Chrissy, is our 7C on? I thought I heard some sounds earlier. 2329 Bridgeford Drive, can you hear us now?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
All right, there we go. We can hear you now. That's great. So in saying that, we'll get Jennifer to introduce the topic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the applicant, Tony, and thank you for your patience, is requesting to develop 3 building lots on Bridgeford, number 23, 29, and 35. He will require a foundation elevation variance for all 3 and does require a 9-meter side yard setback variance for number 35 Bridgeford. The lots are all in the rural zone. They're all single and two-family dwelling. Single and two-family dwellings are permitted uses in the rural zone, and that is the intent of the applicant, to develop them with single-family homes. The one at 35 Bridgeford, they would like to develop with a single-family home with an accessory dwelling unit in the bottom. This is permitted. Notices were sent out and no concerns have been received, and staff don't have any concerns at this time.
Thank you, Jennifer. For the applicant, could you please state your name for the record, please?
Yes, it's Tony Rahim.
Tony, you would have received the same package we did in the mail. Is there anything you'd like to add or discuss prior to members of the PAC or members of the public asking you some questions?
No, I just, as Jennifer mentioned, those were my main concerns and issues, right? So,
Perfect. All right. Any members of PAC have any questions for the applicant? None being, is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Mr. Bishop.
I'll put a motion forward that PAC approve the 10.5 foundation elevation variance to section 6F1 for PIDs 302-61853, 302-61846, and for 302-61838. Also approve a 9-meter variance to section 25F3 of zoning bylaw number 038 for a side yard setback, and to support construction on the subject lots to section 6I and 6BB1 of zoning bylaw 038 found at 23, 29, and 35 Bridgeford Drive, subject to the following terms and conditions. 1, the preparation of a hold harmless agreement should be executed for a PID numbers 302-61853, 302-61846, 302-61838 prior to approval for the final inspection of the dwelling. 2, notification is received by the town from the Department of Environment and Local Governments providing approval for the development occurring within 30 meters of a water course on the subject PIDs. And 3, a building permit is issued prior to construction.
I'll second it.
On the question, please vote. Motion carried by a vote of 5-0. So congratulations. And next 5 to 7 business days, you'll have a letter in the mail with your approval. So please work with the town to get all necessary documentation and documents in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Item 8, information items or discussion. Can I have a motion to receive and file, please? Brenda?
So moved.
Seconder? Mark?
Second.
Vote, please. Motion carried, 5-0. Thank you. Item 9, adjournment. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconder on that. No seconder? Come on. Brenda?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Don't need a vote on that. Oh.